Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Son of a Blitch podcast. I'm your host, George Blitch. Today, I had the honor and privilege of sitting down and having a wonderful conversation with Jim Shockey. For those who are not familiar, Jim is a Canadian writer and outdoorsman. He has published over 1,000 articles in his lifetime. He is the television host and producer of multiple award-winning shows, and he is just a wonderful, wonderful human being. He's also the founder of the Hand of Man Museum, which I highly encourage you guys to all go check out online and in person if you're ever through the Vancouver Island area in Canada. And today we can add another thing to his amazing list of accomplishments, and that's being a novelist. This book, Call Me Hunter, is his debut novel. It comes out today, October 17th. It's in stores everywhere. And I'm going to go ahead and say it right now. I believe it's going to be a bestseller. It is a phenomenal book, a page turner, and it is, as he describes, an autobiographical, abstract, fictional thriller. And it really is that. The threads that you can find throughout this book tell his story of his life, and it's such a wonderful life at that. And this book, it's hard to put it down. It is a phenomenal book. And he talks about this in the podcast, so I won't bore you with the details now because he's going to be telling you about it, and he does it a lot better than I do. But this book is phenomenal, guys. You're going to love it. Check out this podcast. Enjoy, this conversation. Jim really opened up and shared a lot of personal things, and I was just astounded and just honored. It's one of my favorite interviews I've done to date, and he is just such a wonderful, wonderful man. And I'm thankful, Jim, that you joined us today, and thank you all for listening to the podcast and watching it if you're on the YouTube platform. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I do this because I love to share the stories, messages, and works of all these amazing people I've come across in my life, and Jim is one that fits all those bills. What a great guy. Again, everyone, go check it out. Order it today. Call Me Hunter by Jim Shockey. And thank you guys for tuning in. Without further ado, here is the interview with Jim Shockey.
Hey, Jim, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Well, good as can be these days. Could be better, but yeah, making it through day to day right now.
Well, I completely understand. And I know this is so much going on in your life right now. Your book is going to be coming out. This podcast will actually come out on October 17th, the day that Call Me Hunter will be in stores. This the advanced reader copy over above me here is the official release. And, for those who are just hearing about this for the first time or may not be familiar with, anything about this book, can you go ahead and kind of talk to us a little bit about it? Maybe kind of give us a quick synopsis so we can kind of maybe dive deeper into some other questions, but maybe just a brief description of this book and its content, and tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. Yeah. I knew at the age of 10 that I'd have a museum, which that's where I'm coming to you from right now, but also that I'd be a novelist. I was a voracious reader by the age of 10. So I started my first novel then, and I realized real quick, A, I couldn't spell, B, I couldn't write, C, and most importantly of all, I didn't have a story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew, okay, the museum, I can start collecting insects and pretty rocks and fishing lures and seashells, but a book, a novel, to be a novelist, to me, you had to live life first.
Sure.
So I started living, and I dedicated my life to living, literally, and figuratively. In 1993, I sat down and I started my novel again. I penned those first lines that it starts with. Zhivago is dead. I hunted him down and I killed him. I penned those lines and I wrote that first page. And as I started thinking, when I, sat at my typewriter at that time and thought about it, I went, I still haven't lived enough.
Mm-hmm.
I still have not lived enough life. There's two ways you can write. You can be a novelist. You can go to school and become, get a piece of paper that says you're, have a degree in literature or creative writing, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then you sit down and you start writing. That's one way to do it. The other way, my way, the only way I know how to do it is to live. And so in 93, I said, okay, I still got to keep going. In 2016,
I decided that my last international trip, and I was traveling over 300 days a year for 20 years at that point, uh, I decided Mozambique, October 2019, I was done. So I was booked that far in advance, 3 years in advance. So 2019 November, I sat down and figured, okay, it's time. You've lived them. You better start. At this point, you don't have a whole bunch more actual time to live this life. And if I didn't start writing, I wouldn't get it done. So I sat down and picked up those same lines. Vago was dead. I hunted him down and I killed him and wrote my story. So, back to your original question, it is literally and figuratively my story. If you had to slot it in a category that doesn't exist, it would be an autobiographical, fictional thriller. I'd call it an abstract fictional thriller
Yeah.
because it's like I say in the preface, it's like cubism.
Mm-hmm.
You can see what you're looking at. You know that it's a human being, but it's abstracted. It doesn't quite fit. So that's where I've used literally a visual art to apply it to a written art, and that's where you ended up with Call Me Hunter. So it's my story. It's literally my story. I say that in the beginning, and I would love people, and I said it in the preface, to dig deep into it. Dig, like whatever you're reading in there, go research it. Go find out. Find out if it's true. And I think what how I feel about that is, and why, it's like quicksand. If they keep fighting against suspended reality, they keep fighting against it and they're going to struggle more. The more you struggle in quicksand, the deeper you sink into that novel's hold. So yeah, it's my story of, and I say in there, living a life beyond the pale. It's not, if there's a bell curve of life, how people live, with the center being, I don't know, downtown New York City with a job at I don't know, wherever. Mm-hmm. And everywhere you push out to the edges, I'm definitely out on the edges of how people live their lives. So that's what this story is about. It's a fictional book. I tongue in cheek, I say that it's 80% fact, and the 20% that would put anybody in jail, that's the fiction part. So yeah, so yeah, it's I had a lot of fun writing it, and I'm looking forward to hearing what people think about it, because it's different.
It is different. Well, even like Jack Carr talked about it, one of your friends, is like, it needs its own bookshelf. It is its own type of thing. There is that autobiographical element, the fictional, the thriller, that abstract cubism type of thing where, I found, and we'll kind of dive into this here, it kind of starts out with Nyla getting a manuscript. This girl who's just, kind of freshly out of college, and she's working, in the journalistic field. And here she is, she gets a manuscript, and I'll kind of maybe let you jump into that a little bit more. But in that manuscript, it's written to her. And as she's starting to read this manuscript and learning about that, oh, it's connected and it's written for her specifically, and this person knows her, and she's going through this journey, it's a different, like, flashbacks of time. And I knew that when I realized that there was going to be some autobiographical elements to this, that this was going to be something that, hey, I need to fact check this. And so I did exactly what you suggest readers do. And I suggest everyone do that the same. While she's fact checking things that she's getting in the manuscript, I'm fact checking your book and learning things about you, Canadian, national team water polo champion here. You've got, your time and your honorary stuff with the Canadian government there. There's so many things that the main character, one of the main characters, has, and you can see these time shots where you're placed in it. And I understand that idea of you having to live your life in order to be able to write this down, because your story is all throughout this book.
Yeah, it's pretty cute. I had someone else had an advanced reader copy, and they, they said they delved into it. He said, yeah, but look, he said, what am I going to do? Ask Lonnie Anderson. He was kind of snickering, thinking, okay, that's one that you couldn't Well, and I said, well, it's if you're going to research, it's about desire, and
Uh-huh.
there's no limit to your ability except for your desire. And if you didn't dig deep enough, so I just made a few do Google, and I showed him, because he was speaking about specifically a dinner that I reference in the novel at a restaurant in Vancouver with Lonnie Anderson, WKRP in
Uh-huh.
Cincinnati, wife of Burt Reynolds, and Stephanie Zimbalist, who played with Remington Steele, whatever his name was, and Michelle Lee, one of the biggest soap opera stars in the 1980s. A dinner with them, and another fellow, Laszlo George, the Hungarian photographer, who was the photographer on a movie that they were apparently doing, and then an absolutely beautiful, most beautiful woman that the character Icarus Hunter had ever seen in his life, at this restaurant. And so this fellow was and Icarus, the character, was in the dinner. And so he was kind of laughing, say, yeah, I mean, that's not possible. And I said, so I just sent him a cast list of what is it, Tale of Three Wives, and it's Lonnie Anderson, Stephanie Zimbalist, and Michelle Lee, and Louise Johann, which is my wife Louise's maiden name. So he wouldn't have picked up the Shockey, but the Louise Johann. And
Yeah.
Laszlo George was the cinematographer on that particular movie set. So Lonnie Anderson can't deny it. She was there. I know she was there because I was there.
Yeah.
I was there in the restaurant, and so was Louise. The most beautiful person, beautiful beyond beauty that this character had ever seen. So I mean, I'd love people just go ahead, just research it, find out about the art references. Go find it, find out. So it'll be interesting. I think I even said in the preface that I hope somebody with a lot of money, that just what tries to wash away this problem with the money hose, because they'll run out of money. And I say at the end, is it, is it fiction, or maybe not? It's up to people to decide.
Well, what is it that you hope that readers will take away from this book? And I think I also need to kind of preface too, you have a 2-book deal, and this is not the only book. Like, there will be a continuation of this. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So there will be more to for other people to dive into later. But as far as and we'll get to that, but what is it that you hope people can grab from this book and take away from it in that experience?
Tolerance. What I've done in this book is I flipped the stereotypes. The anti-hero is not, the anti-hero is a hunter or becomes a hunter, but there's no animals getting killed. Anyone that's listening to this that thinks it's a book about hunting, it's not, but it absolutely 100% is.
Right.
Not is, what is it? But I flipped the stereotype. So the anti-hero, who has his tragic human flaws, is also a hunter, but also a deep thinker, a philosopher in a lot of ways. Exactly what the opposite of the stereotype in mainstream media would have hunters being, the lout that spits on the floor with no higher sensibilities. So I flipped the stereotype, and I've made the villain an animal rights extremist. So and all through the book, I'll play with people's their ideologies. So you think that this is good, you think this is wonderful, this is good. Yeah, I'm with this guy, and then all of a sudden you get a right hook that lays you out that it's not what you think. Right and wrong is a cultural perspective. We all know what's right and wrong inherently, every one of us. So that means a lot of what we believe is cultural perspective, how we were brought up, where we were brought up. And in this world today, we really have to start tolerating each other and our points of view and realizing, no, the person's not stupid. They're not stupid. I'm not stupid, but I'll guarantee there's pile of people out there that think that I've got to be the most ignorant lout that ever walked this planet, Neanderthal caveman. But I'm actually not. So if I'm saying something articulately, educated and thoughtful about it and been around for a long time. So, I technically I'm an elder, which kind of means I should have some wisdom from the, 6 decades I've been on this planet. So maybe you're wrong about judging me. And that's what I've done in this book. I've created stereotypes, but then flipped them and flipped them and flipped them and created cognitive dissonance with people when they look at something and believe this is the way it's going to be, but it's actually not the way it is. Just a quick story on that. I had someone else got an advanced reader. I don't know who they were, but they on Goodreads, they made a review. And they said they only read up to the part where, the fictional character, who's a young lady, is judging another character in her office that she works with. And the fictional character talking about a fictional character, that she called him an insipid, gender confused millennial with a man bun, right? And that was her. That was a bigoted, horrible comment. She was judging someone in her office. And the person said, I never read past that. I was offended, and I'm woke. I won't read past this point. This is garbage, and gave it a 0. And so, or a 1 or whatever the lowest rating is. And it just astounds me that person's ideology is such that they won't even read a work of fiction to see if maybe, and I know what happens. I know the sequel. I mean, because I lived a life. And I know the character that she's judging and calls that. I know what he becomes in the future. There's a bit of a clue to anybody that's actually into this and looking forward to the next one. I know, and this person doesn't know, but their own, I guess, closed-mindedness is keeping them ignorant. And so, who's truly the intolerant person, that person, or the person that reads on and learns and then goes, oh, maybe I should rethink what I was, my ideology. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'm not wrong. Maybe they have a point of view. And that's what I'd like in this book for people to take away is tolerance. We've been vilified and marginalized for probably 60 years now by mainstream media. People that live the outdoor lifestyle, field table living. We go kill a deer and we eat it. That makes perfect sense to us as naturalists, but we've been vilified as being, again, like I say, louts, throwbacks to some, archaic age that we'd rather forget and try and erase from our history. But they're wrong about it. They're wrong, and that's what I hope on this book. It's not a big world anymore. There's 8 billion of us, and we better start at least trying to understand the other point of view from the other people. Because what are we going to do? Eat each other? And rats would do that if you shoved them into one box. Too many rats. They've proven that. So like I say, tolerance is, I'm hoping, what people will take away from this.
Oh, absolutely. And, you've traveled all around the world, and that's something that when you travel and you meet people from various cultures, what you learn and the growth spiritually and emotionally and just mentally, like the things that you get from traveling all around these places and meeting all these people from cultures. And that's something you've celebrated in your show. And, that in different times where, even in your books that you've written previous to this about your, hunting world, and like that, there's so much that you've gotten to be able to bring into your life. And then I think you talk about so much that is about that idea of tolerance and understanding. And, to that example too, that you just mentioned, the person who puts down the book, it's like characters develop. I mean, you look at Icarus and what he developed. He was going one way. He was a part of the our world system, and for if you want to maybe talk about our world and kind of maybe give people an idea of that, the gathering, the connectivity and such, and the artwork world that is that kind of dark shadow world a little bit, maybe just kind of give people that idea of the kind of a synopsis of the storyline there too. But that there's characters in your book that have these advancements that continue to learn and develop, and it's something that I think people are closed-minded to that idea. Who hasn't learned one thing and then gained another later on in their life?
Yeah, of course it is. That you're speaking about our world. That's the organization in the book that they began with John Sotheby's, way long time ago, antecedent, and it was created to locate the greatest works of art in this world, and these are cultural objects. They're cultural treasures for these countries, but this organization that's funded by very wealthy people that get together at something called the Gathering, and then they auction off these fine works of art. The rest of us, greater unwashed in the world, will never get to see these works of art. The problem was that our world needed actual, how do you find these great works of art, these masterpieces? They're hidden away, they're or some are in plain sight, but people don't recognize what they are. So, the premise of this book is that there's some of us in this world, 8 billion of us, that are born with an innate ability to feel beauty, to feel it, to feel the spirituality of a piece. And whether they feel it in, Icarus, Hunter, the man of swords, Sisu, when he sees the world in sepia tones, brown on brown, brown on brown, and that's how he sees the world. But when something of unbelievable, like from God beauty is in front of him, he sees it in color. So that's his, super talent, his gift. And that, others, there's others. The villain, Zhivago, he senses it in like a smell. So it's like and he becomes a creature from the other world, Lovecraftian horror from the third dimension or fifth dimension that comes out and just crawls to the, he feels beauty with a smell. So he follows it by sense, like a predator that's blind, a mole going after a worm underground. They just, that's his sense. Joan of Arc, another character, she had it literally thrust upon her, that talent. So it doesn't mean it's necessarily innate. It can also be with a sorrow so great that you suddenly, someone gets idiot savant gets struck by lightning, and the next day can play Mozart's, symphony in A minor. Mm-hmm. So there's sympathy for the devil. I'm getting my symphonies mixed up. But so you can also be thrust upon you. You can, but so our world needed to find these characters, or these operatives, they call them, that had this, and that's the premise of the story. That there's a young boy that can't read. His teachers, told the mother he's, with something wrong with him. Is he slow? Is he better take him to a child psychiatrist? And when they do, the psychiatrist discovers that this kid is not just, he's not slow. He's so beyond fast that there's just no measure for it. And so he's on the autistic spectrum, probably we would call it nowadays, but it's right. 1962. It didn't exist back then. There was no autistic spectrum. They didn't know what that was. So, right. But this, and then the child psychiatrist endeavors to learn more about this child. And of course that awakens, it hits a thread on that web that goes to our world. And they send a character, Charlotte, to take care of business, to make sure this kid doesn't, nothing happens to this kid. He ends up under the Our World umbrella because they need those characters. And he turns out to be along with Zhivago, the two greatest of the talents that have ever been discovered by our world in hundreds of years, with the ability to locate these masterpieces for the gathering to sell to these wealthy people. So that's that's the story of it, and it's it's deep state stuff in a way, because this organization is so wealthy, and the people that patronize it are so powerful in the world that they control a lot of the world and what happens in the world. The wars, they can make the war, they can finish the war. They do it because war creates chaos, and in chaos there's opportunity for them to find these, steal these, borrow these, replace them with fakes, masterpieces from museums around the world to bring them to the gathering. And someone else, a reviewer the other day, asked me, does our world exist? And I said, of course it does. It absolutely does. And any one of us listening to this right now, just look around you. Look around you and see if you can't recognize the tenets of our world, greed, avarice, power, lust, gluttony. I mean, the seven deadly sins, look around you. Of course it exists, and organizations exist that are run by people that's their entire existence is those terrible vices. So yeah, our world exists. Of course it does. And this is the metaphor for what's happening in this world today. And again, I'm hoping that by exposing that in a novel way, because we haven't been allowed to say it out loud. You'll be canceled. You're not allowed to say it. A conspiracy. Whoa, you're a cuckoo, and you get canceled, and you're way out on the fringes. But you can tell stories. Goodness sakes, Solzhenitsyn did it behind the Iron Curtain.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the writers from the Victorian era that were exposing. Alice in Wonderland. If you think that's not a metaphor, Gulliver's Travels. I mean, these are Jonathan Swift. I mean, these guys, they wrote these books because they weren't allowed to say what they were thinking. But you write a book about it, and a book is a metaphor. And Call Me Hunter is a metaphor. Call Me Hunter is the truth. Call Me Hunter is real, and so is our world. So again, and I'm not comparing myself to those great writers, although if anybody one day down the road would say that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and I had, we were both good writers, I would rest easy for eternity. But yeah, what I've done is tell a story about our world today, and like I say, is it truth or is it fiction? It's for everybody to decide. It's abstract. You have to read it to draw your own conclusions.
Sure. Well, that's the 80-20, right? There's so many times I was scratching at a story. I'm like, which part of this is the 20, or is the 20 really a 2? And it's
well, like I say, I caveat it with the part that would put anybody in jail.
Right. That's important. And there's some things in the story that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that aren't in the story. I tried to I went into Iran back in 2004 and tried to get in the next year, and they said, no, you're a spy. And I tried to get in the next year after that, and they said, no, you're a spy. And so I waited, and felt my connection over there, Siamak Conaseri, great guy. But he was, great guy, but he was part of the revolution on the student side. So he was, he's an enemy at one time.
Right.
When the students lost to the fundamentalists, the communists and the students and the fundamentalists all fought after the Shah was deposed, the students lost. So he was put under house arrest, and he could still travel within Iran, but he couldn't leave. But 2007, him and I decided, no, because I went in 2004 with him, and he was my connection there. In 2008, we said, okay, we'll try again. So I applied for a visa, and then all of a sudden I couldn't get a hold of Siamak. nothing, off the grid. And so I didn't get back in 2009. 2010, I found another connection, and I got it this time. I got a visa, and I went back into Iran and traveled all over the place. I mean, had a vehicle. We just went everywhere, and I kept asking, what happened to CMAC? What happened to CMAC? And finally, after about 3 weeks, I think they felt comfortable enough to tell me that CMAC was at a family reunion with his wife, his 2 kids, his mother, father, brother, sisters, and every single one of the extended family except one were killed. So this is all real. This is real, and so when I'm saying 20% and 80, my tongue in cheek,
yeah.
What was I doing there? What was I in Afghanistan for? What was I in Pakistan for? What was I doing in Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan? What was I doing there? And this is why I want that question in people's mind. What was he doing there? And that's the mixture of the reality, the nonfiction part, and the abstraction of what I was actually doing. Yeah, you thought I was there for hunting. Pretty good cover if you're doing something else, I would think. But hey, I'm just a storyteller. Although this is a story.
And it's a great one at that. I mean, it's riveting for anybody who's thinking about ordering this and checking it out. I highly suggest you do. There's so much richness to this. I'm learning a lot about you by, like you said, you suggested in the preface, like, go and Google some of these things, find these things out. And I know that now going through and some of the characters and what is revealed, I won't give any spoilers, but things that are revealed by reading it, now going back through and reading it through that lens of understanding. And I'm sure there's just more layers of richness that comes from that. And, you talked about a lot of the different things you mentioned earlier, like Hunter. He wasn't reading or writing at a young age. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you had a similar thing with you when you were younger, and you had some issues with reading and stuff too, right?
What's interesting about that? My grade 3 teacher, because grade 3, I couldn't read. I mean, I couldn't see Dick run, see Jane go up the hill or whatever, see Spot does whatever Spot does. I couldn't read. And so my teacher, Mrs. Miller, she suggested to my parents that they take, me to a child psychiatrist and have them tested. Just find out what's going on here, because this kid everybody can read in the class except this kid. And Mrs. Miller has reached out to me just recently. I sent her an advanced reader copy of Call Me Hunter. So it's kind of a full circle.
Wow.
The teacher that recognized that, by grade 3, you should have some ability to read. And my parents did take me to a child psychiatrist. It's in the book.
In the book, Hunter, at the time, he goes to the child psychologist, and this doctor recognizes that he can understand. He's looking through the pages. It's almost like a photographic memory of sorts. He's being able to absorb all the information to this book. They have a conversation about it. So it's not like that he couldn't absorb that information, even though the reading might be an issue. Is that something that do you have a photographic mind? Like, are you able to see these things and kind of get them? And, that'll lead to some other questions too, but I was curious about what was that, or was there something that you had to work on to be able to kind of overcome some things when you were a kid?
Sometimes silence is an answer. You know what I do to a lot of people? I'll say, like Cody Robbins, I'll say, you know what I like about you, Cody? And of course, every single time he'll go, what? Everybody wants to know what you like. And then I just don't answer. And I say, silence is an answer. So that's the easy way for me to answer your question. The reality was I was bored. I didn't want to read that. And I had a great interest in wildlife and animals and all things cultural, natural. And so the psychiatrist actually told my parents, he gave me an IQ test, and told them the results, and he said, listen, your kid has no problem with reading. Your kid just isn't interested in what the teachers are trying to get him to read.
Right.
So they told my parents, take him to the library and take him to the wildlife section, take him to the art section, take him to the sections of the library that he's interested in, and please don't bring him back here anymore. So that's the truth. And as I said, by grade 5, I was reading voraciously. I mean, I was reading adult level, whatever. It didn't matter. If I was interested in it, I mean, J.A. Hunter, his book Hunter was, I mean, that was my Bible in those days, figuratively speaking. I read it 3 times, in that 1 year. And I said it before, I was sent to detention by the teacher many, many times because I was reading J.A. Hunter's book, when I should have been reading whatever they're reading in grade 5. So, which was great. I went to detention and I could read my book.
Right.
So, I
show them.
I was a voracious reader by the time I was, 2 years after that. But yeah, it's truth, truth. And again, a tiny little bit of fiction. Do I have a photographic memory? I don't know. I do pretty good, but I wouldn't say that I have a photographic memory. Mm-hmm. The child in the book, the character, Hunter, can read he doesn't read, he assimilates what's on the pages. So it's not even a photographic memory.
Yeah.
It's ability to just look at something and understand it. Page. Okay, got it with 100% retention. And in the book, the character, Nyala, the journalist that is an investigative journalist, she starts researching about idiot savants and finds out that, hey, that's not unusual. None of this is unusual. I rephrase that. It is unusual, but it's not, doesn't exist. It does exist. People can do that. Read 180,000 words a minute. I mean, that's 2 novels in not a minute, but an hour. I mean, fast as you turn the pages, basically they can read it, and they've been tested on it. Tested. I think you'd probably want to take into account who was doing the testing and follow the money, but it's speed reading, doing the assimilation of knowledge. We all know somebody who's just kind of brilliant that doesn't. I mean, I know guys. Dave Ferguson, my buddy in university, he never studied. He played guitar the whole time, and he would go in straight A's. He just knew the stuff. We all know people like that. Well, now imagine that's 1 in, say, I don't know, maybe it's 1 in 200, it's 500. But imagine if you have someone who's 1 in a million, or even more, 1 in a billion. Right now, today, there's 8 people walking around this planet that have abilities that you and I can't even comprehend. That's a fact, because it can't be otherwise. It can't be otherwise.
Right.
There's 1 in a billion, whatever that talent is, and I don't know what it is. I mean, little Mahomes there with the Chiefs, he's got some kind of special talents. No one can tell me different. So there's that's just a physical ability to play football and comprehend plays and read the play ahead of the play. But there's people that have senses that the rest of us just don't have, or we have, but we're too busy in our cluttered lives. We're on our cell phones. We're doing our daily jobs, which is the death of creativity. So, and I see it here in this museum, our Hand-of-Man Museum, and anybody Google it, it's 17,000 square feet, and it's not a regular museum. It's definitely outside the box on museums. But the reason it's called Hand-of-Man is because the Hand-of-Man Museum of Natural History, Cultural Arts, and Conservation, the museum is filled with things that are touched by mankind, humans, people, whatever the politically correct, us.
Yeah.
And so when you walk through here, and there's totem poles carved, by First Nations, there's beadwork by, the American natives. There's masks from all over the world, and outfits and wedding blankets from Siberia. I mean, there's just every cultural thing you can imagine. and back to the point, I have people walk through this museum down the grand hallway, we call it the great reveal when we open the sliding doors, and they're in tears by the time they get halfway back, because they have a sense of the spirituality of everybody that made each of these pieces, because that's all that's left of them on this planet, more than likely. No one remembers their name, no one remembers anything about them, but there's their work of art on the wall, and their spirit resides in that piece, absolutely 100%, just as surely as you and I are talking right now. God put it there, or whatever your faith is.
Right.
There's a spirit of the people in that piece, and the people that are really switched on to it, they're in tears by the time they come back, and they're, thank you. Well, like they sense something that the rest of us don't have. So back to Call Me Hunter, there's people that have abilities that we can't comprehend, and there's powers and forces out there that are not looking after yours and my best interests. They're looking after their own best interests. So, does our world exist? Yes. Does Hunter, that character that turns into Icarus, that turns into Tizu, the man of swords, does he exist? Absolutely. And I mean, Tizu, man of swords, talk to First Nations out here. Does it exist? Did that story, that legend exist? Yeah, it does. Tizu, the man of swords, he shed his skin, and it was covered in swords, and he provided deer for the tribe, for the family. This, and then the soul catcher, does it exist? That's the whole premise of the story. This soul catcher is the greatest single work of art that ever existed, ever created by man, or God using the hand of man to create it. So what is it? What is the soul catcher? And that's the whole premise, is that our world has been seeking the soul catcher for hundreds of years, and they are not sure if it exists or not, but they constantly getting vibrations on their threads, and they're like a spider sitting in the center of it, that there's the soul catcher is going to show up, a vibration in the thread, send the operatives to try and locate, to recognize it, because they don't know what it is. They just know it's the soul catcher. It's the greatest work of art of all humankind. So yeah, that's the premise. As you can see, I had a lot of fun writing it, and it's a complicated. It's layer upon layer. You can read it. You could read it on a beach, but you're going to get the facile top level layer. And the deeper you dig, the more layers there is to Call Me Hunter.
Oh, it definitely is that. It's not something that, there were some times where I was confused, and there's a character whose name we just mentioned changes. And so there's some times where you just have to follow it, but then those threads get tied up and you learn later on, oh, okay, I was confused, but now I get this, I understand. And then just like the idea of, it's not just a linear story. There's so many different angles and things that are weaved throughout it. And it really is, it's a masterpiece. I mean, Jim, I'm beyond impressed. And I really do feel like, I think Jack Carr said it best. It's like, it deserves its own shelf. It's something that's it's different. And, but at the same time, I feel like it's very accessible. Anybody who reads it is going to get a lot from it. And those people who dig deep are really going to learn a lot about you and about, things that are on a larger scale. And I'm so excited. What does it feel like for you to have been working on this in your head for, 25 years, to have that printed copy in your hands? What is that like for you?
It meant a lot more to see it in Louise's, my soulmate's hands. They actually overnighted the first one off the presses just to get it so she could see it before she passed on. And and she held it because she's been part of this life that I've lived, that is Call Me Hunter. And so that was the culmination of our, and she sacrificed, to write a book. It takes discipline, and it takes motivation, desire, but it takes time. And when I'm sitting writing and I'm living in that world, I'm not mowing the lawn or just being with Louise. So she sacrificed as well to make this happen. So that was really the high point for me, was that Louise got to hold it. And I read it to her out loud twice. Once at the beginning on the earlier version of the manuscript, and then I rewrote, I added an ending different. I added 4 chapters from the second book to the first book, just to wrap up ends, rather than leave it as a cliffhanger. And I read it out loud to Louise twice. And so she, it was very special for her and I, and to see her holding it was, that meant a lot more than me personally holding it. I set goals, and I attain goals. And I don't care if the goal takes half a century, to attain. I'm capable of focusing for half a century. Probably not anymore. I'm going to have to revisit the century long or half century long goals.
Maybe 25 years. 30. Yeah.
Yeah, me. Yeah.
I'm hoping for more, but yeah, I understand what you mean.
So to hold it, but again, I don't. I've never lived in the past. It's not my style. What happened yesterday happened yesterday. I cannot change whatever happened yesterday. I made every decision leading up to yesterday based on my best ability, and worked hard and never wasted a day. And I literally don't have a single regret. Someone asked me that the other day. I said, no, none. They said, come on, you got to have something. No, there literally is not one single regret in my life, not one. And I, so that means, I did everything I could to yesterday. Why would I have a regret about it? I did everything. So yesterday for me is I live in the present. I'm here right now with you present.
Yeah.
But I spend most of my cerebral time in the future. So back to your question, how did it feel? Great. The most important part was to see Louise, that she saw that this goal was attained, because she knew right from the beginning. She always felt I was she thought I was a great writer, and I'm using her words. I'm not saying that. She just loved. I'd read her the articles I'd write. I'd read her the stories I'd write, and it meant a ton to her, that this book came out. It's my story, and here it is. This isn't a short story for a periodical. It's not. I've written thousands of those, or 1,000 of those.
Sure.
This is actual a story, but I'm trying to answer your question, and back to it again. What did it feel like? It kind of felt like, okay, that's past, and what's next? Now it's not, anybody. Now Simon and Schuster, New York City, published it. So I believe they're doing 125,000 copies, which is a incredibly high number for a first-time novelist. But how did it feel? Okay, it feels like now the work really starts. I need to get this book into people's hands, because I do believe it'll change the perspective on it'll act as a catalyst to change the perspective on hunting and hunters, the field-to-table lifestyle, the outdoors people, the people that live in rural areas, that ranchers, farmers. I believe that this book will start changing the urban perspective on who we are. And that's the majority, is the urbanites. It needs to get into their hands. The tolerance isn't necessarily pointed at you and I. I think I haven't met anybody yet in our world that, and I don't mean our world, the organization, our world, that isn't a good person, a good family people. They're just, and they tolerate people. That's what you are. That's what you believe. That's great. But we're being so shifted over the side and painted with this color. This is what we are,
right?
And it's not what we are. And so who's doing that? This book is designed to reach into their houses with our message and say, hey, maybe you want to rethink what your ideologies are. Maybe you want to rethink your judgment of people that live this lifestyle. Maybe they're not so bad, and maybe they're actually pretty intelligent, some of them at least. And once you get thinking that, then you realize, no, they all have something good. Every single person out there has some good thing inside them somewhere. You might have to dig pretty deep, for some, and I mean, I'm not including psychopaths, and the
course
world's
not.
got those, but just because they're a different color, because they eat different foods, they dress differently, because they speak a different language, they come from a faraway place, they have a different religion, doesn't make them evil or bad or wrong. So we need to start being more tolerant again. That's what that's meant to do. But
Yeah.
you have to play inside their game. Just a funny story about that. When I first wrote it, my agent Esther Fedorkovich sent it to 10 literary publishers. So they published literature, with literature. And because it is such a multifaceted, deep, metaphoric. I mean, it's not a
rich.
Yeah, it's not a. It is almost literature. Well, it should be, but not one of them read it. They all sent the manuscript back, and they said, every one of them said, "No, we Googled the guy. He can't possibly write literature. Impossible."
So short-sighted.
But this is
yeah.
This is, and they judged me. They judged me because he wears a cowboy hat. He's not a professor. He doesn't have a literature degree. He's not down and out. He's not suicidal. He's not, got every vice in the world. And from that low place is writing, fine work of art. He can't possibly do it because he's kind of together, has a family, grandchildren, dresses like this, and he hunts, so they sent it back. So that's why it ended up in commercial fiction with Simon and Schuster and they had to slot it somewhere, so they put it in the thriller category, and it to a degree it is. There's certainly that's the closest. You wouldn't put it. I mean, you would possibly put it in romance, but it certainly isn't a Harlequin,
right?
And you won't find any of that until the second and third book. But yeah, that's all down the road. But yeah, it felt great having the book, but it's past. Okay, now let's get out there to everybody, to as many people. Even if every hunter bought this, that would make Simon and Schuster enough money, and it doesn't make me money. Trust me. I literally make more money going to my mailbox and running my empire than I do doing this. But if it makes them money, it's going to open the doors for more of these type of books that show characters that have the stereotypes reversed. And we haven't had an opportunity to do that since Hemingway and Ruark, those guys back 1960, when Kennedy was assassinated. That pretty well closed the door on us, and so this will hopefully start that. I mean, yeah, it's a big goal and a big dream, but that would be my goal, and we can do it. We can do it within our own organization, our hunting world, of people, like-minded people. And so my goal at this point is to let all of them know, hey, even if you don't like reading, get the audiobook. I mean, I personally read the second person perspectives in the book. So any of the italicized sections of Tsizu talking, that's second person, which is never done in a novel. It's so rare. Like, I don't know, there's maybe 4 examples somewhere.
Right.
There's probably a professor of literature going, no, there's 5. But it's the second person perspectives in a novel. It's done in autobiographies, but not in novels. And so I read those parts, and I told them I wanted Scott Brick to do the audio on the rest of it. And they wanted 7 readers to do various parts. They sent me 21 names or 21 audio clips to pick and choose who I wanted to read the various characters. And I said, no, I want Scott Brick. To me, he's the classic Clive Cussler. He did, Michael Crichton books. He's Scott Brick is super cool. I never met him, but they said 100%. If you want Scott Brick, we'll get Scott Brick. So hunters, you're in your truck somewhere, driving wherever, get the audiobook. But like I say, if enough of us get behind this, we can move the needle, for what is acceptable in mainstream. And once we get there, then we can tell our story. And our narrative is a wonderful, beautiful green, like field to table living is, this is our temples, and we take care of these temples. So, and everybody else wants to. It's just hard to do on the 23rd floor of a high rise in New York City. So, but if we show them, if they read this, and enough of us buy it, so that they allow more of these stories to get out, I think it'll be a great service. It'll start swinging that pendulum back the other way. Jack Carr's already started. His character, James Reese. I mean, the guy's a hunter. He's a hunter, and that's so he's. It's pretty masculine, his book, his writing. So it's. There's a segment that, well, okay, here, try this one. This is a little different now. It's a female character as the protagonist, young lady. And I don't want to give it away, but I can't. I don't want to say because it'll give it away.
Yeah, I know.
But again, I'm hoping that's my goal in the future now is to get this out into as many hands as we can. Everybody out there listening, buy 10 copies for your mother. Like the Rolling Stones, what was that 5-man electrical band? Yeah, buy 5 copies from my mother.
Yep.
But yeah, just give them away. But it doesn't matter as long as I honestly think it'll make a difference. It's not about money. We're giving this whole museum away to a society, the land, the building, the contents, and an endowment to cover expenses for 40 years. So it'll always be donation. I grew up in a trailer park, so I couldn't have come in with a $1 cover charge. So it'll never be a cover charge in this museum as long as I can reach back from the grave and control the board of directors. So this isn't about money. I'm going to give it all away anyway. It's not, I don't need, look at it. I've got 20 cowboy hats still in boxes waiting for, when this one wears out. So I don't need a lot. And Cabela's gives me clothing. So, I don't want the money. I don't need it. I'll give it all away anyway. So it's not about that, because anyone out there that's, he just does it for money. No, I really truly believe that this book will make a difference if it goes well. If I can get on talk shows and I can talk about, hunters and hunting, because that'll come up. What about your past? You killed a lot of animals. Okay, well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the conservation of these species, and let's talk about your ideology and what's inherently wrong with the way you're thinking and how it's hurting wildlife. Give me a voice, and the way we get a voice, or give us a voice as hunters, the way we get a voice is by playing their world, playing in their world. Because you know what? It's our world too.
Wow. It's well said. The idea that people who are anti-hunting, like the idea of not hunting is a very new and very foreign concept. We would not be here talking to each other if our ancestors didn't survive for millennia to be able to get to this point. And hunters, regardless of what anybody else may say, are the ones who are putting back the funding, which is the important part, right? And the awareness to conservation and to being able to increase the habitats of wildlife and being able to make sure that some of those wild places stay wild. And I think that goes way over people's heads. They don't recognize that we are the ones that are doing the most of the conservation work, or at least funding it, which is very imperative. And, that's one of many tenets of things we need to do. Buy this book, share it with your friends, get this awareness out, and being able to do so much. And, like you said, too, being able to have an endowment and being able to have something free where people can come and appreciate these arts, reach back into the relics of our past, really understand where these riches of our lives come from and how we are here. And I was, in that thread too, I was curious, is there some pieces of artwork or artifacts that you found that have just kind of came out and put a rainbow in the middle of that brown on brown that may be around you? There's some things that you're like, wow, and that may be now in the Hand of Man Museum, kind of like some of the, I'm not comparing you to an operative of the art world sense, but I was curious if there's been some things in your travel throughout all these countries that you've walked upon something of such rare and magnificent beauty that is just something that was so profound, and maybe someone's donated, or maybe you brought back to the museum, or something you'd like to tell a story about.
And I know you said you didn't want to compare it to the operative. Every single piece in here in this museum, and donations aside, there really is only, there's a large mounted marlin that was donated. a crystal from Ron Coleman Mines, fantastic. And there was a whale skeleton as well donated. But for the most part, I mean, I don't know, there's probably 200,000 objects in here. I found them. Now some of the arrowheads, they came from people that found them 100 years ago.
Right.
And I got them out of their collections. So I found them in their collections, not actually on the ground. I found thousands of these artifacts, looking myself. But all the art pieces, they're pieces that spoke to me. They weren't donated. Someone didn't just come in out of the blue and give them. I picked and chose them. And why? Why was that? I sincerely believe, back to what I was saying, and then maybe, people going, oh, heebie-jeebie. No, I believe here, I'll say it, the Spirit of God resides. Look around us. You want to deny that there's a God? Come on. And I believe that spirit, whatever it is, and I'm not promulgating any particular religion or faith, or denigrating any other religion or faith from where it is around the world. Animism, Hinduism, Islam. I'm not denigrating any other religion. I'm just saying that whatever the creator that they all, even the First Nations, their creator.
Sure.
I believe that often the works of art that are the best came from a higher source than the person that made it, that created it. And these pieces that are in this museum, every single one of them is spoken to me. That's why they're here. Now, sure, I've seen pieces in museums around the world that are beautiful, and in situ in places, where with shrines. I mean, Romania, going through the villages and seeing the crosses that are, like 8 feet tall in people's front yards, they're spectacular. But how are you going to bring one of those back? Although over time, probably there would be, sale of those objects too, although mostly they'll just rot away. But I was never able to bring one of those back, but spectacular. So, I get asked a similar question, whether there's any one piece in here that means more to me. And the way I answer it is no, there isn't. There's not one. There's pieces that are more valuable money-wise in the marketplace, but, and some extremely valuable, like there's one piece that I've, we had pieces at home that were, Louisa and I, everything from our home is coming to the museum. We're donating it all. But we lived with those pieces, but I'm bringing one in today that's, it's $150,000. And so it's valuable money-wise, but it's not any more important than I can see out my window right here, at a Bamileke mask from the Cameroon grasslands. And why? It's because the person that made it is equal to the person that made the Sistine Chapel, equal to Michelangelo. We are all equal. Da Vinci was wonderful works of art, but that doesn't make what he created intrinsically more important than, this piece right out my window. A sampler from the Hutterite colonies, or a Hindu embroidered wedding blanket. There's Amish quilts. There's, Doukhobor woven caviar and palace and darushka rugs, in the museum. There, and the reason is because we are all equal as human beings. And that means whatever we created is just as valid, as long as it was created with that, soul, with that spirit, and for a purity of purpose, whether it was ceremonial, whether it was religious, whether it was just out of love. I've got a Valentine's box here that was carved, and it was love. It was folk art, but it's love. It's so whether it's ethnocentric or idiosyncratic does not matter. The person that made the piece, each individual piece, that's what matters, and they're all equal in my mind. So I don't have a special piece or a special memory about each one, because every single one of these spoke to me as I see it. And these are not tourist pieces. They're and again, it harkens back to Call Me Hunter, the ability to sense beauty. the ability to recognize it, whatever that is, and it may be just for you, that beauty. People ask, what do I decorate my house with? Well, decorate it with whatever you want to decorate it with. You don't need to have a decorator so it doesn't offend some other people that come into your house. If you love it, buy it, because it's talking to you. That thing is talking to you. It may be garish to someone else, but if it speaks to you, it's that's because the spirit of the person that made it. Now, if it's factory made, days made in Japan, was it Paul Revere and the Raiders? All the Cherokee people, Cherokee. All the things we made by hand are now made at days made in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
If it's made in China, made, factory, bluff, 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 tuff, 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 and stuck on your wall, there's no art in that.
There's no soul to it. Mm-mm.
It's absolutely soulless. And I walk into houses all the time, and I'm not judging, because if they want to live a soulless existence, who am I to judge that? I guess I am judging, but again, it's not people can say, I can't afford it. Bull crap. You can go to a garage sale and you'll find something that's handmade by somebody that meant something, a tool. There's lots of hand forged tools. They're super cool. Tools that were used, that were, beautiful. They to live with those. I see, when it's funny when I do these podcasts, I get a sense of the podcaster,
mm-hmm.
the interviewer, by what's behind them. And to see you with the arrowheads and the books is fabulous. Jack Carr's behind him is all books, and and now of course he's got
and I've got all his here too.
Yeah. And you got to be responsible to who brought you to the dance. I've got my
mm-hmm.
my little stuff behind me, but we also do this out in the actual museum with dinosaur skeletons and woolly mammoth skeletons and whale skeletons, narwhal. We got it all here. Elk, moose, and mounts, but then also the cultural objects like a 23-foot Newchalnoth whaling canoe, thing dugout. From the West Coast here, Northwest Coast. So yeah, back to your original question, there isn't a single piece. There's pieces that I have family memories for sure. Like my dad's last moose is on the wall, where he hit it through the first bullet through one of the tines. You can still see the hole. But that's a different type of value. That's a personal object that brings back a memory of an event or an accomplishment. Which for my dad at 79, getting his moose. And there's Eva, our daughter's first moose, a little tiny one down in the corner. If anybody comes to the museum, they'll see that too. So those are different types of memories. But as far as the objects in the museum, they're all equal. Every single one of them is taxidermy mounts. That's artistry. Those are artists that do those taxidermy mounts. Every one of those are just as important as the next one. So yeah, there's no one piece that has a particular importance, because they're all important.
Well, that's a great answer, and I'm glad you elaborated with that too. All the different places you've been and the things that have the story. Oh, what's this? Well, that's when I met these people and they invited me to this ceremony, or whatever it could be. Like the story that comes from that thing, that idea that some people think about, like hunters. Oh, that's just a trophy. They just want to look over and they've dominated that. No, it's like that might have taken them 40 years to be able to get on that hunt, and they were there with their father or their friends or their daughter or their son. And it's the story, it's the things that come together, and that connectivity with human beings and our own hearts and souls, that I think there's people, you understand it, I understand it, other people who are in the same breadth understand that kind of idea. But it's something that I think, like you talked about too, the richness of that education and being able to bring that tolerance around with your book. It's another valuable aspect that I think people understand the richness thereof. I know you have some other things to do today, so I want to ask a few more questions before we head out. You've got a book tour coming out for Call Me Hunter. I see that you've got, I think, almost like 10, 12 different dates over here. You're going to be traveling all around. Can you kind of give us an idea for those who are going to be going to this? What does that format look like? What are you going to be doing? You're going to be doing some readings, some interviews, some signing pictures. What exactly does that look like so far?
Well, first of all, do not mistake me for someone that is, like I am not on a need to know basis, apparently. So, I know I have to be picked up tomorrow morning and taken to the airport, and I'm flying off to North Carolina, and I have an appearance in Cary. Just this morning, I actually told my people here that are organizing our side of it that make sure there's a tall stool. Like I'm sitting on a tall stool right now, but for me to sit, crunch down into a chair, and then everyone's standing up that's coming up to me, so I'm down low like this, signing up. Hey, how you doing? Yeah, great. And then I have to get out of that chair like a jumping jack to take a picture, and then sit back down and sign it. It's been a lot of years since I've done appearances like this. So, I was just rusty, and my crew didn't even think about that. I said, no, there has to be a tall table like what I'm sitting at right now, and a tall stool. So I can get up that easily and just talking at people, I'm pretty tall sitting on a stool. I'm, about eye level with most people. So I can look at them when I'm talking and not be like this in a chair and then have to hop up. I mean, you hop up 500 times in 2 hours. It's like a workout. So, and my knees, I'm trying to save them, whatever, for as long as I possibly. So back to what's happening. I think I'm doing it all at Cabela's and Bass Pro Shops. Not all. There is some at book stores. I know Jack Carr is actually coming to be with me on one of them in Arizona.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, Glendale, cool. Arizona on October 25th.
Okay, is that the one that Jack's coming? I don't know, but
well, that's an Arizona one, so maybe that's it. But yeah, maybe not. Okay.
Yeah, probably is, and I don't know. I don't know if it's a book club or bookstore. Like
okay, got it.
Need to know basis, and I'm not that up on the food.
Show up here.
Exactly. Bring your pens and your hand.
Bring your pen. Work out the arms. Yeah.
But I think when they were doing these, I said, why don't we do them at the Bass Pro and Cabela's stores? I mean, I love Bass Pro and Cabela's. Johnny Morris, one of the greatest conservationists, and John Paul, his son. I mean, these guys, they walk the walk on conservation. Their Wonders of Wildlife Museum aquarium is just, I mean, it's beyond world class. And he puts his money exactly in what he believes in, which is conservation. So I said, let's do the book signings at Cabela's and Bass Pro stores, as many as we can, and they pick them. I know a lot of people are on Facebook and Instagram right now saying, why aren't you here in Wyoming? Why aren't you in Oregon? Why aren't you here? Why aren't you here? Well, I didn't choose, and I there's only so many places I can get to, but I will try and make it to every state, eventually on this and do these appearances so I can personally sign the books that people have. They, I believe each store and every single Cabela store and every single Bass Pro Shop store will have Call Me Hunter. I believe this is the only book. It's the only fiction book they've ever sold. And I believe it's the only book that's going to be in every single store. Some of them you might have to look for, but some of them I think have I don't know if they have a stand-up, I don't
display
know.
Or something, right?
Yeah, but each of these appearances, I believe they're bringing in 250 copies of Call Me Hunter. And so people can, as long as they're in the first 250, they can buy it, which I'm sure, hopefully, I mean, I'd like to see 500 people on one hand, but on the other hand, I don't want anybody to go home without a book. But they will have 500, and anybody right now can order them online from any of the major bookstores too. Chapters and Barnes and Noble, they're all selling it. So that's great to buy from them too. But that's as near as I can tell. People come in, and I have hopefully a high table and a high stool so I can look you in the eye and take a picture. And depending on how many people, I hate ever leaving anybody not, I just hate it. It's just not my style. I mean, I'll wait till the last minute, but I know they've got me on a fairly tight schedule for travel. So, I might have handlers that make me, but I'll still go down the lineup, say hello to everybody as best as I can. And, I'll do anything I possibly can to meet and greet every single person that's out there. And like I say, let's turn this into a party. I can use a little bit of fun and a joy. So I'm looking forward to meeting everybody listening and all the people that are fans or that want to buy the book. And I think another good thing about it too, by having it in the Bass Pro and Cabela's, anyone that's sort of the reader world, not our outdoor world, they have to come to Cabela's or Bass Pro to meet the writer of this book, the author. Normally they would never go to a place like that. Well, now here's what we're like. Look at this is families. These are people that are good, people, patriotic people that love their country, and I think it would do a great service to mix these as opposed to a bookstore where not necessarily all of us would go to, but Cabela's and Bass Pro were kind of comfortable. So we'll see how many actual people that are, book people will make that effort, because it's out of their comfort zone to walk in a Bass Pro, Cabela's, and especially if you've got 300 people there all having fun and laughing and telling stories and being who we are. I mean, that's who we are. It's camaraderie, friendship, family, storytelling, traditions. This is who we are, and they get to actually meet us in our element, as opposed to reading about us in some way jaundiced version, that's because that's what the popular press has been stereotyping us like. So now they get to see what we're really like. I think it'll be an interesting event in every place. But yeah, let's tear this house down and have some fun at these appearances. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh,
well, not
I can't.
Literally tear the house down. By the way.
Yeah. Bass Pro, we will not do that. We promise. Cabela's, sorry. It's going to be amazing, man. I can't wait to see you when you come through in Texas. And I know I highly encourage everybody, pre-order your book. Go and bring one, because the 250, I think that's going to be gone quick. So you should bring your own if you want to get one signed, if they allow that. And before we kind of head off, I wanted to ask you, and I think a lot of the things kind of tie in really nicely to this question, is about your personal and professional legacy. What is it that you want that to be, and like your perception of your own legacy, and if you can just kind of explain maybe what it is that you want to be known for as you step away one day into that final sunset.
Someone told me, someone wrote it, that what you accomplish in your life is kind of irrelevant. Mm-hmm. It's what they remember you for when you're gone. And people, we're just humans. We don't remember one generation, like it's just gone. So to me, I would love, this museum will carry on. I'll make sure there's enough money. This is the legacy right here. Here it is. You want the story? Here it is. You'll exactly right. This is the whole story of this museum. From my first seashell that I collected at 10 years of age is here. So for this museum, I collected it. And so that's definitely part of the legacy, but this isn't the Jim Shockey Museum.
Right.
This is the Banded Museum of Natural History, Cultural Arts, and Conservation. And Jim Shockey was the one that was instrumental in putting it together, and Louise Shockey and my family. And there's a little shrine in here for Louise that's will always have fresh flowers. And I would, I guess, like to be remembered a legacy of made a positive difference on people's perception of hunters and hunting. That would be wonderful. To actually push back that goo, this black judgmental goo that we've been tarred with all these years, and wow, here we are. We got through it, led the way, opened the door to get us out into the sunlight and show everybody what we're really like. Good people. That would be a wonderful legacy, and to be someone who showed the world how to be tolerant, helped show the world, by example, love, showed the world what it means to truly love somebody, and those are just, I don't know, being a good person, as good as can be. I'm not, like I say, trust me, I've got another book that'll be coming out fairly soon that I wrote while Louise was going through this, over the last year, and it was 56 stories of our beginning, her grandparents, my grandparents, but little stories that are personal stories of her childhood and how we met, things like that. And then, I talk about my childhood. I could have been a mastermind thief. I could have been a criminal. I had that opportunity. I think I'd probably be great at it and made a pile of money and still be walking around free. Like there's many criminals right now that have powerful positions. So I had that option back then, and I talk about that. Here's, when you're faced with the high road or the low road, the low road's pretty easy to walk up. I mean, but the high road takes effort. You have to really desire to be walking that road. So yeah, just legacy. I just want to be remembered as somebody who genuinely cared and devoted their life to making this world a more positive place. And had great guidance from a soulmate that honestly was an angel on earth. That's why she had to go back to heaven, that early. So yeah, it'll be the legacy.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing all that. Thank you for being so open with all your feelings and your thoughts and your story with me today, with your book, with your career. And you've enriched and enlightened so many people, and I can't wait to read the future books, see the future interviews, talk to you in person, and being able to hopefully maybe even have you back on again sometime. We can talk about that next book or that next chapter, whatever goal you set out to achieve, and when you're achieving it. I want to be a part of that and hear about it all. And I just want to thank you so much, Jim, for being here today. Before we sign off, I know there's going to be a lot of people who might want to know, how can they follow this journey of all the things that you've done, that you're doing? And if you can maybe tell people, your social media spots and your websites that people can go and follow.
Sure. I mean, I've got Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Those are easy places because I live on those as far as what's happening in my daily life.
Mm-hmm.
You want to follow what's going on, it's all there. I don't sugarcoat it. It is what it is. Also, you can go to our website, jimshockey.com. You can check out our museum, handofman.org or .com. And I think if you type in Hand of Man, it'll come up.
And that's in Vancouver Island, correct?
Vancouver Island, yeah, about an hour north of Victoria. Anybody that's coming up to this part of the world, the west side of Canada, it's worth coming up to the museum. I can't guarantee it, but because there's 1 in 1,000 people that walk in and hate me and hate everything. It just
we'll go for the other 999. Yeah,
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So they love it, like literally love it. You can see the Google reviews. So yeah, I'm easy to reach, easy to follow, and hopefully, if Call Me Hunter makes enough waves, you'll be able to see me on some of the TV shows and whatnot, the talk shows and newscasts. And we'll see if it gets picked up, turned into a movie like Jack's book did, then who knows that, but right now that's what I'll be working towards. And anybody who wants to follow along that journey, which is just a lot of hard work, but not complaining, because it's also a ton of fun with like-minded people. Yeah, so yeah, and I do appearances at SCI's National Convention in Nashville this year, and I'll be at SHOT Show, and I'll be at Dallas Safari Club Show. I think I'm doing speaking at the Wild Sheep Federation and here in British Columbia, stuff like that. I'm around, but it's all going to be online. If you follow me on Instagram, Facebook is a good one because that's a pretty engaged audience on Facebook. Actually, people, Instagram not quite as much, but there's probably 430 or 40,000 on Instagram, but 750,000 followers on Facebook. So it's a significant number, and it's a lot of fun because we get into it sometimes. I'm not afraid to stand up and say, okay, let's duke it out here, buddy. Whatever I don't have much of a tolerance for intolerance. Boy, that's a terrible thing to say there, because I think you should always be tolerant of everything, but I'm intolerant of intolerance. So there you go.
There's a T-shirt that's somewhere in there. I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's important. No. Well, thank you, Jim, once again for coming on and being a part of this. And I wish you all the best travels for the book tour. Everyone go check it out. Go get your copy of Call Me Hunter. It's a phenomenal book. Everyone, I think, is going to love it. And I know that it's just destined for great success. I can't wait to see it rise and see you continue to be able to share all the things in your life that are important with your family, with your heart, with your soul, with your art, with your museum, and everything else that you put out there. And thank you for being so open and sharing so much of your life with all of us. It really means a lot to me personally and everyone else I know.
Oh, made my day. I'm going to get a big fat head. I won't be able to put my cowboy hat on. But yeah,
you stretch the next one out. Well, cheers. You take care. We'll talk soon.
You bet.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.